A Mashrou Leila. I tried. There's so much more to Arabic music. Does anybody have questions? Maybe I should go speak here. Does anybody have a su'al? Yes, Mr. Offendum.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. I'm sorry I came in late. I was at another event earlier. I'm not sure if you covered this or not, but I noticed that when you were showing the influenza clip, you were talking about how provocative things were getting.
Yes.
There are clips of Halim, like French kissing girls.
Oh, yeah, yeah. That's a really good point, because what I said about Arabic video clips on, there's about 200 MTV type stations with 24-hour video clips in the Arab world through satellite. They don't show kissing in Arab video clips like kissing on the mouth. That does not apply to Egyptian films. Egyptian films, you would see bed scenes, and back in the 50s, it was wow. So yes, that's a very good point, Omar.
Somehow our parents' generation have forgotten that.
Yeah, and to this day they're saying, like, well, if it's in a film, it's okay to lock clips, but not in a video clip. I guess the video clip market is younger people. I don't know. It's very strange. Like I said, one Lebanese guy named Jad Shwayeri kissed a girl on the lips, and that video was pulled off the air, and he was blacklisted. Yeah, can I also say hello to Dr. Alim? Hisham Alim, I've known for 10 years. I won't embarrass you, but you see how he has a beard now, and he's a distinguished professor and young man? I knew him before he could shave. He was my student, and he has gone on to do fantastic things. His book, Articulate While Black, about Obama, is like one of the best reads you'll ever have. Brand new book. He's been to Egypt. He specializes in hip hop, Islam and hip hop. Speaks perfect Spanish now, better than Arabic, I hear. Anybody else? Yes, please.
Going through all of these little clips, I had this distinct sense that women's voices are getting higher with time, that the style seems to have changed. And I was wondering if there's like a moment when that shift happened. Somebody.
Like, do you mean the pitch in their voice, or what they're saying?
Yeah, the pitch in their voice.
Wow, that's actually a good question, because, where Kulthum and, the larynx of gold and Fairuz very restrained, now we have, young women singing hip hop. And certainly borrowing from Western genres. And I'm a believer that you can empower women and marginalize social elements by borrowing good things from the West. I'm not into like, well, if it's Western, it's bad. On the other hand, I think Haifa Wahb is a good example of how so westernized can the Arab people become, that now we're just objectifying women. They're the way we objectified them here, and until maybe recently, arguably. So, but in terms of their voices, absolutely, maybe it was unacceptable for a woman to be screeching, sort of letting it all out, Mariam, that you saw with the hijab and non-hijab, has a great voice. Yes, sir.
So I'm from Iran, and one of the transitions that's happened in Iran, I'm wondering whether that has happened anywhere in the Arab world, is that after the Islamic Revolution, essentially all Western instruments, many of the earlier clips you showed had violins, cellos, and the orchestration was very much a Western rendition of traditional Arabic melodies. Mm-hmm. And that has been completely done away with in Iran. And I'm wondering whether such a transition has ever occurred in any of the Arab countries. And I'm not really treating all of the Arabs as one nation, as distinct different cultures. Is there any part of the Arab world that has retained its authentic instruments in expressing its melodies and its music?
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that I want to say about the new, revolutionary or post-revolution music is that they do a good job of blending the oud, for example, which is a very Eastern instrument, with the violins. And so you hear an Eastern beat, a very, Oriental beat, with Western things. But I think that's why I love it, because it hasn't just copied the West, it's borrowed some things and done it. But in response to your question, I think more progressive people in Egypt today are very worried about the fact that Morsi, the president of Egypt right now, is putting, the Jon Stewart version, which we saw the Bassem Youssef in jail for saying something against the president and for becoming too Western. Now Mashrou Leila, I'm not sure if they're going to be able to ever go back to Egypt, at least not Hamid Sinno. So there is this kind of abolishing of, what is now seen as Western constructs. And unfortunately, it's still seen like gay people or the concept of being gay is still seen as a Western construct. Although, of course, Arab history and literature is filled with examples, but they still say, oh, well, he went to the West, he studied there, so he picked it up there, came back and wants to practice it here. So I think this kind of thing, it hasn't really happened in terms of the music. Maybe also the internet has a lot to do with it. The countries in the Gulf that normally ban this kind of Ibahi video, thanks to the internet, people can get on and watch Haifa Wahbe and others. I think there's a fear of that happening. But I don't see it as really because of the internet and independent artists like Omar Effendim doing their own stuff. I don't think Omar can go to Syria right now, right, Omar? Yeah, he's been abolished in Syria despite being a Syrian-American artist, singer, whose very album is called Syrian Americana, and who hopes for a better tomorrow for all Syrians and can't watch what's going on there without doing something about it. I'm speaking for you, Omar. Yes, Roy?
You showed artists from Egypt, Lebanon, one from Syria, and I'm wondering what is the process that happened in other countries, like is a similar process happening in Saudi Arabia, Morocco, Algeria?
Yeah, I really wish we had, this should be like an all-day thing that we could have lunch and then come back. Because I really did feel in the artists that I did, I fell short of so many. There are artists in the Gulf that are actually breaking ground now, especially women singers, but not maybe as as radically as their female counterparts in, Lebanon or Jordan or Tunisia. But having said that, North Africa also has an amazing array of singers who sing, the Rai and the Gnewa and all these, amazing, their African influenced rhythms too. And they're doing a great job of calling out for liberation as well. With one guy you saw with Khalid who sang with Noah, that duet, Imagine, he was from North Africa. Yes, Maya, right? I got your name. Yes, Maya.
So I was wondering, as an Arab who lives outside of the Arab world, how you think the Arab diaspora is affecting music now that there's increasing numbers of Arabs living outside of the Arab world?
Yeah, is Arab American music or Arab Canadian music evolving differently than the way Arabic music is evolving back in the native country? And the answer is yes, but then again, that goes back into the mutual influence. Mashrou Leila are clearly influenced by Western traditions. There's bands that are doing Arabic rock. One of them is a Jordanian band called Jadal. It's totally rock and roll with Arabic lyrics, But I think in Arab American audiences, and I shouldn't generalize at all here, tend to be maybe a little less shocked by the representation of women, free women, powerful women, or LGBT people in video clips. But that's being sort of now exported back to the to the Arab world, to parts of the Arab world. There's a lot going on in terms of civil rights in Lebanon right now. Amazing stuff. Yes, Farah Wahbe, and then we'll go to Yaqub. Yes, Farah Wahbe. Her very name Farah means joy, so if you find yourself really happy as she's asking, it's totally normal. Ammo, I love it.
Another question about why do you think that in literature when homosexuality is implied or explicitly portrayed like in the Yaqub's work, Sukhreya, why do you think that's okay and that's praised as being a genius, masterful piece of work, and then when you see it in music, it's wrong and you see it bad?
Yeah. It's a great question. I mean, Arabic literature, and specifically the Nobel Prize-winning Egyptian writer Najib Mahfouz, who won the Nobel Prize in 1988, has books where he has represented gay people. It's just, they tend to be very tragic portrayals. They tend to end up either murdered for their act, or they end up being very miserable and punished. But still, then the question is it better to represent LGBT people in literature this way, or not represent them at all where they don't exist? At least they exist, and is it a step towards, a better representation? I mean, America in the 50s and 60s represented homosexual characters in films like Suddenly Last Summer in a very, demonic way. And it's not till, the later years, later decades that we now have, more full, more fair portrayals. But Najib Mahfouz got away with it, I think, because he was already a big name and because he was seen as someone who dabbled in social issues that nobody wanted to talk about, but he didn't necessarily endorse it. Yusuf Idris, his counterpart, who in many people's opinions should have won the Nobel Prize instead of Najib, he actually did a short story in a magazine called October in Egypt, and it was about a gay man living in the countryside who was like the mayor of a village who was coming into terms with his sexuality. That representation seemed a lot more full and fair and colorful than Najib Mahfouz. But literature, is not like the only outlet now. So this is what the young people are watching, and so I guess I'm not going to speak for Mursi, but it's more dangerous to represent them on TV and in popular video clips than in a book.